Hello, g'day, Yama. My name is Olivia and I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and I work for the Difference Incubator. The great news is there's a team of 4 or 5 of us presenting this morning, not just me. So what makes a great accelerator? How will you make your accelerator greater? We are going to hear from Uncharted. Ākina is going to talk us through some research they've done. Kalsoom and Ebony are going to talk about what the investors want to be seeing. And then we'll have a look at all the stuff that's sort of not content. What we'll do as each person comes up and speaks, we'll give you a couple of minutes after they've spoken to capture the learning. So, with no more ado, I'll hand over to Banks.
My name is Banks with Uncharted. We have, for the first 5 years of our existence, we ran a yearly accelerator program for entrepreneurs. And then we decided we were going to scale around the world, build out curriculum that we could license out to other accelerator programs. And that really forced us to ask the question, what is the essential curriculum that we can license out? We first started running like a 10-week accelerator program, then it became 6 weeks, and then we've now expanded it out. But in all of that time, we really had to ask ourselves the question, what is the 20% of curriculum that is 80% most valuable for entrepreneurs? And that was a really helpful, clarifying question for us when it came to what is the most important curriculum, because there's a lot of noise, but what is the signal? And so I think there's a number of partners today who you'll talk to who will say, okay, the signal is this and not that. I'm just offering what we have observed the signal to be, and then hopefully you can kind of figure out for your context, for your entrepreneurs, what the signal is for them. So we built out a playbook that we then licensed around the world. So 40 countries that we've licensed to. And for us, the real question was, after supporting 600 entrepreneurs in the last couple of years, what is the truly essential curriculum? And I guess I put that question to you all today as you're wrestling through curriculum. What is truly essential for you? Because there's so much that you can provide to entrepreneurs. And it might be tempting to just kind of keep adding resources and templates and guides. And oftentimes we think curriculum is sometimes a solution looking for a problem. So the last question of how are you assessing the entrepreneur's needs in your cohort is a really good one. And that is the inductive approach to identifying important curriculum that you can license out or distribute. And so for us as an organization, we ask ourselves this question of, we want to be a direction-shifting influence for the entrepreneurs that come through our program. We want, once they come through, to be on a different trajectory than the one they were on before. So what is the true curriculum around that? And for us, it came down to 2 things, which is they need a viable business, and by that, they need to have product market fit. They need to be making sales. They need to be able to say, okay, we are solving a problem for our customer and an investable business. And so for us, when we said, okay, the 20% of curriculum that's 80% most valuable, really kind of descended into 2 key buckets. The first was business model validation. And really asking our entrepreneurs, do you have a business on your hands? What problem are you solving? And pushing the entrepreneurs through the process of customer discovery, of prototyping, of making sales, holding them accountable to growing revenue numbers, sales figures. And the second one was helping entrepreneurs become investment ready. We felt like for Uncharted, we could be a direction-shifting influence if we could help create viable businesses and we could create investable businesses. And so we built out 2 modules of curriculum which are in this licensed playbook. One is business model validation and the other one is investment preparedness. So again, the slides are a little bit messed up, but in business model validation, the key elements were we identified the foundational assumptions that underpin each venture. What we discovered over the years was that actually entrepreneurs who are much further along had to take steps back, had to actually say, okay, let's actually pull back the layers and understand what assumptions are underpinning your business. We built out a repeatable methodology to teach entrepreneurs on how to go do customer discovery. What we found is that entrepreneurs have this, whether even if they have some traction already, are afraid to take their baby, the thing that they're most passionate about, and take it to the market. Steve Blank says, no idea survives contact with customers. And it's true. We see that entrepreneurs are afraid to get real validating or invalidating feedback from the market. up top here, we help entrepreneurs build out prototypes. If they're early stage, if they're later stage, we help them in this rapid prototyping process. How do you quickly learn and build out prototypes that test key assumptions in your model? And then really evaluate product market fit by completing an audit of sales processes and figuring out, okay, how are you ensuring that your venture is not a solution looking for a problem, but actually responding to a market and addressing a specific problem. So one of the key elements of our curriculum is business model validation and sales. The second piece is investment preparedness. Our job as an organization in some ways is to prepare entrepreneurs to take on capital. And we have fortunately good data around that, where we say that every dollar that goes to Uncharted leads to 21 additional dollars that our portfolio takes on from additional investors. So we can turn $1 into $21 because we help our entrepreneurs become more investment ready. And so that's a process of understanding the investment process, diagnosing where ventures are to say, okay, you're looking to take on capital, here is how that process works. And there's many people in the room, Uncharted is not unique in this, many amazing accelerators in the room who are working to get entrepreneurs to become investment ready. There's different pieces of that, but if that, I think, is the 20% of the curriculum that's 80% most valuable when it comes to being a direction-shifting influence. And then we go deep and work with various elements to help prepare entrepreneurs to become investment ready. So developing their financials, strategic planning, clarifying their fundraising ask. Oftentimes we have entrepreneurs who come in and say, I want to raise $10 million. And they realize by the end of it, they actually only need to raise $150,000. And so really pulling back the layers of that and saying, okay, how much capital do you need to take it to the next level? Developing pitch materials. We then go through and identify funder profiles. And then we'll talk about this later today, but actually bringing a network of active and prospective funders to bear and connecting them with the entrepreneurs who are part of our program. So I'm just only have a couple of minutes, but I think the key thing here is what is the 20% of your curriculum that's 80% most valuable? Our conclusion to that question is business model validation, investment preparedness. I think you'll get different perspectives from different people. And for us, as we were forced to license out our curriculum around the world, we had to get very succinct and very clear about what was essential versus what was non-essential. And if you can focus on what's essential, I think you'll have a much greater impact for the entrepreneurs that you're supporting. So that's my quick thoughts on our process at Uncharted.
What I want you to do is work alone, just you and your notebook, and just reflect on what Banks has just said. So much effort and so much experimentation condensed down to the essential, which is such a gift. So take a moment and just reflect on that. So a theme that you've been hearing over and over again is where's the evidence? How do you know? And so Ākina have done some research, have got access to research, and Chris is now going to come up and let us know what they've learnt from the research and what the data is telling us. Thanks, Chris.
Kia ora tātou te whānau. That means hello family in Māori. I feel like we're slowly edging towards that stage, are we? You know, maybe we've had some fights, but then we come back together as a family. When you're looking at curriculum, I'm really aligned with Banks on this. Like, you could do everything, right? You could create an absolute laundry list of what are all the things we could teach our ventures, but actually what are the things that are really important? And for me, this was a really important question. At Ākina, I'm responsible for our practice, so I have to think about these things. What should we be teaching people? So we undertook a lot of work to look at what is the research that's out there that's actually going to make the biggest difference. So just to recognize where this material comes from, Ākina is currently undertaking a lot of work for our government on what effectively drives change for social entrepreneurs and startups. We've also looked extensively across the world at academic research, looking at both small ventures, small businesses, and social enterprises. What are the key success factors? What is it that really matters? Also want to recognize that Gally, we've looked at a lot of their work, and with AVPN and Andy as well. We also have spent a lot of time talking directly to entrepreneurs, saying, you know, when you got development training, what is it that made a difference? So we try to be a relatively data-based, evidence-based organization, and so I think what I can proudly stand up and say is that this is backed by research. This isn't just my opinion. So, are you ready for the reveal? These are the things. These are the key success factors of skills that small businesses and social enterprises need in order to be successful. It's unlikely you are going to be able to teach them all of these things in a 1 week, 12-week, 6-month, or a year. So to echo what Banks is saying, be really clear about which parts of this you think are really important for you. You know your entrepreneurs, you know your ecosystems. Maybe they all are amazing communicators already when they come into the cohort. Well, then that becomes less of a priority for you in your program design. So we really encourage responsive program design. We don't believe that there's this magical formula that we can kind of keep turning out again and again and again. It's really got to be about, what is special about this cohort? What are we trying to achieve with this cohort? Are they focused on a special area, or are they lacking a certain thing? And if we've been able to identify that. So we think if it's a social entrepreneur, social enterprise, impact management, super important. You've got to have those two parts of the business. They've got to be able to run it financially, they've got to have good financial models, and they've got to have good impact. Because if they rock up to an impact investor and say, hey, look, we're making this great change, and the impact investor says, well, show me how you're making that change, show me how you know that change is happening, then the impact investor is just going to look at them, and if they can't answer that question, they're not going to get that investment. So as I say, there's like a paragraph on each of these. I'm not going to go through each of them for you. That wouldn't be a good use of your time here and now. But specifically, if you're interested in the impact side of things, do come along to the workshop that Guy and I are running this afternoon. And I think it looked like we had great attendance at that. So I'm really looking forward to sharing how we do that. And there are a couple of things outside the skills development that we learnt social enterprises and small businesses need. Coaching and mentoring, and just wanted to dive into the difference between those two things. They're words that are sometimes used interchangeably, but we use them quite specifically at Ākina. So when we run accelerators and when we do programs and work with ventures, we have coaches who are employed by Ākina who are separate from the mentors. And those coaches, their sole job is to ask questions. They're not experts in the area, like say we're doing an environmental one. They're not experts in the environment, but they are experts in asking questions. And as you think about your curriculum design, I really encourage you to think less about what can you talk about and more what are the key questions that you can ask your cohort that they can reflect on, that they can develop. Because, Liv's going to talk about this a little bit later, I think, in the kind of the experiential design of this, but actually having that role is really important. And mentoring, it's been talked about a lot. I'm not going to go into that too much, but we do see that as a distinct role. Mentors tend to be people with more specific skills in our context who can actually give advice rather than be question askers. In New Zealand, we are doing a lot of work around access to money and access to buyers, and we think that those are really important. Capital raising, like Banks says, organizations who want investment need to be ready to get it. But equally well, there's actually a lot of skill in the market development side of what organizations are doing. So money seems to be quite important to most ventures, seems to be kind of the lifeblood that keeps them operating. So absolutely think about ways that they can access capital that isn't just straight capital raises. How can they do it through cash flow, or how can they do it through non-equity programs like Looney's talked about, those sorts of things. And finally, the ecosystem. So you don't exist as a microcosm. There's all this stuff around you that has to exist. Now, that might be too big a challenge for you to take on, but think about organizations like chambers of commerce, other kind of partners who you can collaborate with and say, look, we're really good at this little bit, but for this whole thing to work, we need government policy, we need business buy-in, we need public buy-in, and see who else wants to achieve that goal. Because, again, you want to be really good at the thing you do. You don't want to try and do all of those different things. Back to you, Liv.
Thanks so much. So, once again, brilliantly distilled wisdom. Thank you. So take a few moments. What's useful, why? What's different for you in your locale? And let me just flick back to that as you have a think. So a couple of minutes for you to do the work alone, and we'll just hold some silence for a bit of a change of energy. Okay, so if I could ask you to put that handout from Ākina away so that you can focus on our next speaker, that'd be great, and you'll have time to read that and also talk with Guy and Chris about it. So what we want to do next is we want to hear from the people who are specialists when it comes to investors, and we're going to hear from Kalsoom and then Ebony, and they're going to just share with us what you need in your curriculum to prepare your entrepreneurs to engage with investors. Thanks, Kalsoom.
Hey guys, Kalsoom from Invest to Innovate. I'm going to talk about what we do in the curriculum, but I'm also going to kind of zoom out a little bit and talk about why we're doing the things that we do, and a lot of it has been really iterative. As you guys know, we've been working in Pakistan for 7 years, so our curriculum has really been iterated over time as we listen to what investors wanted. In Pakistan specifically, this might be the case in a lot of other of our countries, there aren't a lot of outside investors looking to invest in Pakistan. So what we did was we also fostered a local angel investor community in Pakistan, which is what I'm happy to talk about later as well. As a result of that, as we listened to those local angels, a few things started to come up, and Banks actually mentioned it, so did Chris. The first big thing that an investor wants to see is traction in your business. So kind of going back and reiterating the fact that your curriculum really should have a focus on how businesses are gaining traction while they're with you. So for us, as an example, what we do is we also use the Lean Startup methodology for them to be going out and testing assumptions. As an example, between 2 of our entrepreneur weekends, we do 6 weekends over 4 months. Our entrepreneurs actually do about 50 customer interviews to actually test assumptions in the market. They use that feedback to come back and iterate. We do revenue generation exercises, and all really focused on actually getting those companies to grow while they're with us. As we were also listening, we realized that a lot of things in Pakistan, and this happens, I think, in a lot of our countries, a lot of these investors don't, when they meet our entrepreneurs at the very end of the program, oftentimes they don't really trust those companies, right? And trust is something that tends to lack in our markets very heavily, especially that's reinforced by the lack of intellectual property, that a lot of investors don't know if their entrepreneurs are going to run off with their money. So one tactic that we actually did was that we actually use our investors as judges and mentors in the program. So we actually start to build those relationships really early. And what we've seen as a result of that is we also started to be able to get feedback from investors at the very beginning of the program. So we actually were able to then really specifically think about companies as they're going through how we could specifically help them become more investment ready. One thing that we also do right now as part of our curriculum and part of our program, and I talked to a few of you about this yesterday, we have a virtual CFO program. So while it's great to have a session, we used to run sessions on financial modeling and projections, valuations, and we still do some of those sessions. What we realized is those entrepreneurs and businesses still weren't investment ready at the end of the program, and their financials sometimes just were not up to scuff. And that was something, as we listened to investors over and over again, those financials were not ready. So a virtual CFO, what that means for us is we actually bring in someone who works with all of our entrepreneurs over the course of 4 months. He starts out by doing a diagnosis of all the companies to see where they are. And then based on that actually works with our companies. He doesn't just give them their financials at the end, but works with them so they're able to understand it and actually be able to defend their financials. Their projections are based on the growth that they have in the program as well. That actually has really far and away improved and drastically improved our program as well as in the eyes of investors. Finally, one thing that we've done that I think is really important, we talk about how investors are going to be happy with our entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs are not happy with the local investors in the markets that we work in. Most investors are very predatory. In Pakistan, they'll try to take 80-90% of companies. I'm seeing nodding, so I think this probably happens in other countries. So what we also do is we do a lot of prep work with our entrepreneurs on everything on investor negotiations, term sheets, but really getting them to think about that stuff. What we've done as a result, and this might be useful for you guys, is we've actually created something called the Startup Toolkit, which is a 101 guide that's localized for Pakistan. I wrote it with a startup lawyer in Pakistan that actually gives an entrepreneur, what we wanted to do was open source it because we're like, for me, I was really tired personally of seeing really good companies die for the sole reason being that they gave up too much of their companies too early, right? So our guide basically tells them how to do, like what investors look for in due diligence. What does dilution mean when they give up a certain percentage of their company? What does that legally mean? And that's a resource on our website that could potentially be localized for your market as well, just to potentially look at. And that was something that we wanted to create for entrepreneurs everywhere, regardless if they got into an incubator or accelerator. That's it.
I think a real key differentiator for Village Capital is that we weren't created to be an accelerator. It was created to completely change how entrepreneurs receive funding and how they're evaluated. So we went out and raised the money, and then we said, okay, we need to bring companies together because we're going to teach them how to think like investors and put the investment decision in their hands. So we said, okay, we need to bring them together for programs so that they can poke holes in each other's business models, and it's actually like another layer of due diligence for Village Capital. So our whole curriculum is based on investor readiness. We kind of train our analysts to think about due diligence is what we do for our companies. And what came from that, from the programs, is over time, we're like, oh, wow, this is an accelerator. People started telling us this because it's also accelerating their business, which is cool. What's great about it is what we allow for a lot of you or other people that do accelerators around the world is you can focus on running your programs and helping to support entrepreneurs, and you can offload that due diligence and allow the entrepreneurs that go through your programs to make the investment decisions for you. We wanted to create something to help entrepreneurs and investors be able to speak the same language. So I've talked about this in one of the small groups that I did the other day in my session. But we did this through the viral framework, and this is like the backbone of our curriculum. Like all the modules that the companies go through, you'll see along the bottom are the 8 categories that we believe that investors, are evaluating companies. It also shows them, it's just an assessment tool to show them like where they are and like what are the correlating levels of funding that they should be thinking about as they're reaching different milestones. Our whole program is really helping them to figure out like what it looks like, what is a viable path to exit, which is what's really important for us as a fund, but we also, even if we're not providing investment into the companies that go through our program, we want them to be able to get outside investment, to be able to scale and grow if they're building a venture-backable company. And if not, they'll be able to go through the program and learn, like, okay, this is not the company I'm trying to build, and we kind of try to figure out, like, what are the resources that we can provide to them to build more of a lifestyle-type business. So the viral tool is really just to help you assess your progress, shows you where you are, and ultimately helps you build a profitable business with a successful exit in mind. So usually if a company is filling this out, this is how it will look across the board. As you see for this particular company, they're lower on market and scale, so we would have them work on these next milestones as they're talking to investors through the program. Throughout the program, these are the kind of 3 big areas that we cover: customer discovery, pairing them with different customers; investor discovery. Our last workshop we probably bring is very investor focused, like 100, 150 investors come to meet the companies, as well as helping companies think about team discovery and what is the type of team and the type of skills that you need to build if you're trying to scale your company very fast. Not just thinking about today, but always thinking 2 steps ahead as investors are as they're evaluating your business. So every investor has a viral level. We also give this tool to investors. Every entrepreneur has a viral level, but we also have investors go through this tool to look at what are the stages that you actually invest in companies. Which of these categories do you more heavily weigh? So that when investors and entrepreneurs get together, they have a common language and are able to discuss, like, maybe you're not ready for us to give you investment right now. These are areas that you need to work on. These are areas that we weigh more heavily. So we're creating a platform that's a part of our curriculum to roll all of this out.
Thanks, Ebony. Thank you. That was great. So reflecting on both Kalsoom and Ebony, and I know this investor end is a big issue for lots of us. So take a few moments now. What are those things that you want to capture right now? So really quickly on the way through, this is our simple 20%. Mission, model, measurement, management. They're the key areas that we touch on in our standard accelerator. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick look at all the other stuff. And obviously this is just really light touch, and I encourage you just to take one or two things that might be new for you. So always have a look at the science. We are learning so much about the brain. In the presence of a question or a problem, the brain works best. So there were fantastic guiding questions posed this morning by Avery. It's a really great way just to get people engaged and working. How au fait are you with adult learning principles? Adults work best, we work best when we are part of designing the process. So how often do you do sessions where, I think it was Monday we did this, you know, what's the main challenge you're facing? You get all the ideas up and then you make sure that the session engages with and solves that. Or you take a poll and information in the room and you get the best person to provide that teaching. So there's a whole lot of ways you can do that, but make sure that if you're working with adults, you engage us as much as possible. One way to do it is to understand learning styles. And so there they are. What I want you to do is to write down the one you do the least, and then the next one. And here's a challenge for you. How will you get that learning style into your accelerator? We make sure we cover all of them every day in our day-long sessions. Great thing at the very short morning tea that we're going to have is you can go around and ask someone, we never do anything that's kinesthetic, or we never do anything that's solitary. What do you do? How do you do it? Because there are people whose learning style is not being engaged with, and they're not going to be getting the most out of it. Some other ways to think about keeping people engaged, celebrations, milestones. What I do at 2 o'clock most days, 2:30, after people have come back from lunch, we've done one session, is I have some coloured juggling balls and we get in a circle and we throw the balls around with different instructions and lots of laughter and silliness, and it engages the brain in a really different way. We make sure up front that we're saying to people, hey, at the end of this session, we're going to give the last 5 minutes to you to summarise or to extend or to make a comment. We have lots of fun awards. So, you know, a box of chockies to the person who's been most vulnerable or who's obviously been most stretched that day, but has really hung in there and has really worked through their financial model or really worked really hard on their theory of change. And we have some, you know, fun awards for the most audacious pivot, you know, those kind of things. So I'm sure you guys have got some great things that you do. Share them around. Shape sessions with sound. So for me, it's culturally appropriate and okay in Australia that I use a little Buddha bowl that chimes between sessions. If we've had a really difficult session, we do 3 slow chimes and we breathe in and out. If it's, you know, been a pretty easy session, we're moving on, it's just 1 chime and 10 seconds of silence. And as people breathe out, they just let that session go, breathe in, ready for the next one. Draw the journey, there's other things up there. Make sure that you are not serving junk food, especially if you have multiple day sessions. By day 3, the sugar carb overload, everyone will be snoozing the whole time. A really important thing for each of you to work out based on your very specific context and the cohort, and it may change from cohort to cohort. What do you do in the room? And what do you do out of the room? What help do people and support and stretch do people have in the room, and what do they have out of the room? So this is a big area that we redesign every time. Some people cannot give you 10 weeks in a row. Some people have to keep running their business while they're learning to improve their business. Some people have family and other life commitments that they just cannot give up large blocks of time. And so it's really important that we understand the flows of people's lives and the time that they have, and that we block and structure things to reflect them, our customer, and that we design with them. We use the 70-20-10 framework, and we really struggle to meet the commitment on the 20. I'll just explain what it is. 10% of the journey is the in-the-room teaching input like this, if you've had a Western classic education, and in other ways, if you have other ancient knowledge and other ways of learning. Then 20% of the journey, for it really to stick, this is the most important thing. This is the link between the 10%, the 70% of doing, getting confident in the doing, and then ongoing, lasting change, not another book of notes on the shelf, which we all have. Okay, so the 10% is often what gets touted as the whole thing, but it's not, and we know it's not. So the 10%, the 20%, that coaching, that holding it together, the being there to answer real-time questions and engage real-time with the problem and then push them into that 70% of doing with some support and backup, can be quite expensive if you do it all as one-on-one coaching, and that often is not possible. So think creatively about other ways of getting this 20% happening, and there's a couple there. We have the Fitzroy Academy in Australia, which has an amazing online video library, and I encourage you to have a look at that. We find it fantastic to reinforce learning as coaching. We have a session and we say, go and look at that, and then go and try these things and then come back to us.